Good evening. It is another episode of Esports with Emric. We're talking EU Masters. It's Friday night. We're going into the second part of the round robin in the group stage, and we've got a doozy to start off with. One of the groups that's been the most active, top to bottom, pretty intricate. This is Group D, right? I don't know which group it is, but I mean I know who's playing. So we've got Mouse Sports, we've got Macho, we've got Vodafone, and we've got Carmine. So really interesting kind of group of teams here that we will be starting off with. Macho, despite the fact that they are 0-3, have been a bonanza for fantasy. Just racking up a ton of points and making this pretty interesting in terms of how we're going to have to attack this slate here when we get into that in DFS. So, we're going to start off with a comment from, Joshua Roberts. I heard, I know that he's a big Northwestern fan, so he's a little salty right now. He's going to talk about PDW, who kind of ruined that day, but not him. No, you're right. He was fantastic. He carried it. Going back into day 4 was a pretty bad day for me. It was over pretty early. Had a lot of PDW, had a lot of Penta, and that didn't work out. The Fnatic Misfits lineups that we talked about kind of saved the day towards the end, especially Misfits. But it was a bad day. We're not going to review it so much. We're going to kind of look ahead because we did have that one-day grab. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's pop this up here. Boom. There it is. Let's make this a little bit bigger. All right. So these are kind of the statistics. Oh, yes. Day 4 was bad. There were no dogs, and that's fine. You can go ahead and catch it in the morning. You go ahead and enjoy the rest of that Michigan State game, or Northwestern, however you want to look at it. But, okay, so when we're looking at these teams, one of the things is not to overreact too much in regards to what we've already seen, but then take that information and process it in such a way that, again, we're not overreacting to it. So far, KC is by and far the best team in this group, and we knew that going in. I would say that the other 3 teams, Miles is probably number 2, and that's what we thought, but I don't think that Matco and the Giants are that far behind them, and certainly a good run from one of those 2 teams is going to put them in a position to get out of this group. I don't think by any means that Miles is safe here. Obviously they're 1-2, so the Giants have that second seed locked up right now, despite having a couple closer games, and even their win over Miles was not convincing. So I still feel like Miles has been the better team of those 2. So let's take a look and see what kind of Vegas has to offer here. In terms of the betting odds, we get to open up with Carmine Corp, and they're going to be playing the Giants, and this is kind of a rematch of a game. Obviously, all of these are, so that goes without saying. Negative 325 versus plus 230. This is one that, at those odds, Giants are still a live dog here, but I don't expect them to win. I wouldn't put a ton on that. I'm thinking Carmine's going to do this. Now, going into this, I decided to kind of take a look back historically at what happened in spring. Going back to the play-ins, in the group stages, I wanted to see if any teams were undefeated and utilize that in this facet of the play-in stage to kind of gauge whether, the 3-0 teams had a realistic shot of getting out and being a team that makes it out at 6-0. And while those teams in the play-in stage very, very rarely make it out as a 6-0 team, I didn't need to go very far. I didn't need to put a lot of research in. I just went back in the spring where Big, Carmine, and UCAM all made it out 6-0 out of this stage. So, very clearly the separation of talent at this level is far greater for those top teams to the middle level and even the bottom teams than it is in the play-ins, and that's to be expected. So there's a very realistic possibility that KC goes ahead and 3-0s this weekend, or tomorrow, I should say. And we should kind of expect that, and that's kind of how I'm approaching everything. So going back into this, We have the next game after that is going to be Maus and Macho, and this is going to be a game that really kind of defines the rest of the day. If Miles wins this game, Macho's 0-4, and they're probably not getting out of this group. So it's a must win. It's a must win for Miles too, because if they lose this game, now they're 1-3. Macho's 1-3, and at that point, Miles and Macho probably don't get out of this group. So there's a lot here, and especially if the Giants win their game, but I don't expect them to. So let's kind of assume this. Let's assume Carmine wins their game. They beat the Giants, and then we go into this game, and I want to say that Macho should take this, but I'm gonna back Miles. They just looked better overall in their matchup against each other, and there was a lot to that game, and hopefully we can get another game that's similar to that. But I'm going to back Miles here. So we're going to move Miles up to 2-2. We're going to eliminate Macho, and then that really kind of throws into air the next game. So when it comes to betting these lines, you certainly want to not necessarily make some of these bets opening unless you think it's the better way to do it. You just basically have to evaluate these games game by game and what you think is going to happen. So we're assuming at this point that this game is seemingly meaningless for Macho. I mean, obviously at that point, if they're 0-4, they really, really, really need a win against Giants. But let's assume they don't get it. They're not as big of a favorite or as big of a dog here as they are against Miles, which I think is indicative of the way that the game's played and what we saw versus the actual results. Yeah. Hey, look, don't we all, Ghost Rider? Don't we all? We'll talk about the DFS side of it. We're kind of talking about the betting side of it right now. I don't know. I like Giants at -155. I think this team has come together throughout the playoffs. They've come together in this tournament and picked up that win against Miles, which was a good spot. But I think they win here, and the very realistic possibility that Macho does not come out and perform anywhere near the way that they did in the first 3 games and is completely not competitive in these games is something that we have to consider. And I don't think that that's where the field is going to be, simply because when you're trying to put together your lineups, especially when we get into the DFS and it's kind of melding together here, you kind of need to find that difference. I mean, everybody's going to have 3 or 4 Carmine. That's just what's going to be stacked in there. But we'll get into that. Obviously, I'm getting a little off track here. So going into the next game, Miles versus Carmine. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is another game where Carmine takes this -230. I think that's a decent line. I think you can convince me that Miles could pull off an upset here, and +175 is fine. But I'm going to lean on the side of the favorites. I'm going to lean on the side of the team that's been the best team out of this group and has been one of the better teams in the tournament. I think that they've shown some signs of weakness, and they've shown that they're not infallible, but nevertheless, I think it's a fair line. -230 is okay if you want to place that bet. And then the next game that probably means absolutely nothing is going to be this Macho Carmine -385. That's way too big of a line for me, especially in a game that could very realistically and potentially mean absolutely nothing. Both of these teams could be completely locked into their seeds, one completely out of the tournament, one on their way to the next round. And anything can happen in those type of games. I would expect that they kind of mess around and maybe play some pocket picks, some fun champions we've seen in some of the ERLs, especially this. This isn't necessarily just like the Pro League. So I would kind of liken this game to that. I think it was TSM Dignitas game that opened the very first game of the last day of the LCS, where they did a bunch of role swaps and weird stuff. There was a game in the NLC where both of the teams were completely eliminated, and we saw like a Yone Yasuo bottom lane, and I think both teams had like 90 kills combined. It was like 50-40. It was a super fun game to watch. Would have been tremendously tilting on a large DFS slate, but would have been great if you could get an over bet somewhere on it. And, I don't think Bovada is offering that, but some other books might be. So, that's something to be on the lookout for. That game certainly is something that I would want to bet an over on. And then the last game, which, really could have the biggest implications. We could not only just see a game here that gets played a second time as a kind of a tiebreaker. We've got Mouse and Giants at plus 105. This is a line and a game that I think is going to evolve throughout the day. I have a read that I feel like Mouse is better. I think Mouse, comes into this game. Let's just assume the Giants lose this game right here, and so they're 2-2. Giants win this game, they're 3-2, and then this game they're 3-2. At that point, we've got Mouse at 2-2, Mouse at 2-3. Yeah, this game realistically probably is a must-win for Mouse, and it's a must-win for Giants to avoid a kind of a tie-break game. I'm just gonna back Mouse. I think at 135, that's a fair line. I think that's probably going to change, and I feel good about betting that kind of early. So, these days are just a little bit more. I don't know. There's just a lot more to decompress and think about when you have these teams playing 3 games. They're playing each other. It's already what you've seen, and you're kind of thinking of how they're going to progress through the days. When we look at these teams in terms of how they've performed thus far, you can see they all, despite the fact that they have very different win-loss totals, have about the same amount of kills. And, the deaths are obviously the largest disparity between these teams. Carmine, again, at 3-0, have the lowest amount of deaths, and that's to be expected. But they also, funny enough, have the lowest amount of kills. So, the question then is, how do you build your lineup? How do we put together a kind of a DraftKings lineup that makes sense with something like this? I think the very first thing that we do, the biggest difference we might have is, let's start with Carmine in the team slot. And, just full disclosure, I'm terrible at these slates. I don't think I've had much success on these, not nearly as much as I have in other slates. So, take it for a grain of salt. If you have some input that you want to throw in the chat, or you've done well in these type of slates, I'm all ears. But so let's throw Carmine there. So if we assume that Mouse, it's interesting. So where are these prices at? Mouse is way ahead of Vodafone. So I guess the question really becomes, if Mouse can beat Vodafone and they both have a similar win over Mako and they both lose to Carmine, who ends up scoring better, especially given the fact that their pricing is a little bit different? It's 400, it's 200 in the top lane. In the mid lane, it's 400. It's interesting. Masters. Let's take a look at something here. Let's go into the summer main event. Take a look at some player stats, and let's pop over. Let's see this. Just trying to get an idea of what these guys have played so far and kind of an expectation. I think this is probably the key to it. Does Vodafone put Antonio on Ornn weak side? So if he puts him on Ornn, the team is more likely to win, but is he more likely to score? Well, he's better to score than if they lose, but he's probably not going to be as involved as other top laners. So let's go take a look at something else. Pop over here. And where is he? KDA 2.9. This participation is just, it's terrible. Cavachard is just killing it. Yeah. So how do we approach this? Well, we definitely want Chekolade in the mid round. In the mid, I think that he's had the best KDA, best performance. So if we assume that they win 2 games, this is of course if we're assuming that they win 2 games, we're going to put him into the mid lane. Now, on the other side of things, if we think that they lose to the Giants and they go 1-2, then obviously you just stack Casey and the Giants. It's pretty simple. I don't think that that's a bad way of approaching it, but we put him here, and if both of the teams go 1-2, yeah, I don't know. So let's assume it this. Let's do this. For this sake, let's say Mouse wins 2, Giants only win 1. How do we build the 2 of these teams? Let's say Pride Soccer. I don't actually want this team. I want this team. Cavachard, Syncroft. Wow. Okay. I was not expecting the pricing to look like this. And it looks like you can really do anything that you want, which I don't know. I wasn't expecting that. Wow. All right, that's going to be a little bit of a free-for-all. That kind of throws it for a loop. I thought we were going to have some constraints, not just play whoever you wanted to play, and that changes a lot of things. So, yeah, I think that's your strongest lineup. Your strongest lineup is going to be Casey Mouse, especially if you think that they're going to – it all comes down to that last game. Do you think that Mouse ends up beating the Giants? And if you think so, then, you put these 2 teams, Casey as a 4, Mouse as a 3. If you think that the Giants end up winning, then you're going to put the Casey and then the Giants. Where it really kind of gets murky and it's a little bit more difficult to pin down is if you think that Macho can get a win off of one of these teams, and that kind of throws that for a loop. And if they are going to get a win off of one of the teams, I almost feel like it's going to be over the Giants. They played that close game with Mouse, and I just don't think that the next time that they play is going to look anything remotely like that. Yeah, of course. And a comment from the chalk or from the chat. Sorry, I've had a couple drinks. It is a Friday night. But yeah, Casey is going to be uber chalk. Well, why wouldn't they be? Do you see them losing a game? And, in this GPP, yeah, you could play Mouse in Giants. That's something that you could definitely play. But, again, here's the thing is going back into kind of what we're looking at for the schedule. Not only are they going to be uber chalk, but they have this game right here, which could absolutely mean nothing and could be a super, super high kill game. So even if they lose one of the other games, that game could kind of make up for it. So, to that end, they're rightfully. Yeah, you are the chalk, man. You're the chalk. When it comes to screenshots, there's nobody better than Spelkowski. He's the chalk. He's the originator. People have tried to copy it in his absence, but nobody captures a scoreline like this guy. When the leagues allow it. Yeah, so I have a hard time deviating here. If I expect Macho to beat a game or take a game, it's going to be this game right here. It's going to be when they're warmed up, not the game that they just hop on stage against Mouse. I get it, they're not on stage. It's going to be the second game before, after the Giants come off of losing that game and kind of were a little bit tight. So, with the way that it is built, I don't know. Okay, so yes, KC is going to be the chalkiest build. They're going to be probably 60, 70% owned, especially the fact that you can put anybody in there. I guess the thing that we can come up with is this. Wouldn't it be the meaningless game? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that's a meaningless game that could be a ton of kills, and so you have a 3-0 team that potentially, or a 5-0 team at that point, that's going into their third game that could potentially be just a pop off game. What I'm going to say is this: is Carmine has not scored fantastically in comparison with kills of some of these other teams. So you could possibly in that larger GPP play kind of a Mouse Vodafone kind of 1-2. I mean, yeah, you need to look for that. But what I'd say is when you look at these averages, just as a fantasy point average, Attila had that pop off game. Bushy has the second highest. Maddie has the lowest. Okay, so let's say we're not playing X Maddie, right? Mid Sakin, for as good as he's been, is right down there with an 0-3 mid laner, not a 3-0 mid laner. Okay. From a jungle perspective, Syncroft is the lowest, and Cabashard is the only one that has maintained that. And he played Aurelia in that one game, and I think that was his highest scoring game. Maybe I'm wrong, but Aurelia, Lee Sin, those are two top lane champions that you're going to get some points off of, and you're going to score some fantasy kills. And not so much the Jace, but the other two absolutely. So, yeah, 7K. Well, yeah, it was a lot higher last week. But I've got a bunch of stuff reserved for MMA tomorrow. I'm just deciding. 9 games, like it's tough. Let's see. No, it's easier to describe it. I could log out, I guess. Who cares? So I guess the way that I'm actually going to approach this is just avoiding KC. Now that we've talked it through and we've looked at these things, KC maybe doesn't score so well. And I'm not sure that a lot of people are going to think that out. I think a lot of people are just going to build it the way that I would have if I wasn't talking to you guys, if I wasn't putting out this video that Vodafone and Miles have no chance of outscoring KC, but they absolutely do. If their games are closer, and we talked about this earlier in the week, that you're kind of targeting games with teams that have similar talent levels. Penta and Tricked were a perfect example of that. Neither of these teams are particularly good. We don't expect them to get out of the group, but playing together precipitates a better scoring outlook for the winner, because it is a little bit more of a back and forth. Neither of the teams are playing particularly clean. And this is what we might get from these kind of, second, third, and fourth teams in this division here, or in this group. So you're right. I mean, I'm expecting KC to have 60 to 70% ownership. I would say Vodafone and Mouse are probably in that 30 to 40 range. And then maybe that's a little bit high, just given the way that the closeness of the games that they had with Macho. And then Macho is just, way behind that. So, pairing these, mixing and matching, especially with these 3 teams, could be the way to go, and just get a little bit silly. This one's just up in the air. This is one of the closer divisions. There's obviously a very large separation from KC and the other 3, but that large separation has led to kind of stomps, as we can see here. 42 kills over 3. I mean, probably do this in my head if I wanted to, but that's 14 kills to win, guys. It's not tremendous. I mean, it's better than Mako's 0 kills per win, but they've got a lot of kills in the losses. I don't know. Do you guys have any questions about the slate? These ones just always kind of are, like I said, they're a little bit different. We don't see them very often. It's really kind of hard to game theory it. I think we found the way to approach this one is kind of avoid KC, avoid the chalk, just like we always do. Bet the dogs, play a little combination, and just hope for a little bit of underdog upset magic. Yeah, well, they have 50, but they have none in wins. That's the thing. They have 0 kills and wins. So yeah, I mean, again, Last thing that I want to talk about, and we talked about it in the last video, jungle captain, mid captain. Those are kind of the ways that we want to go, especially if you're playing KC. Definitely want to avoid X Matty, or hell, just, if you want to be contrarian, you want captain X Matty because he's done so poorly. Maybe that's the other way. I don't know. I guess the game theory is: do you really think that people are going to fade KC? I don't think that they will. I don't think people are going to be as smart as this group right here. People that are watching this video, we're going to have the huge advantage. We're not going to play KC. It's going to work out really well. It's going to work out really bad. We're going to have a lot of money, or we're going to have no money. And that's how it normally is anyway. So, it comes down to what Nathan always says, and that's just like, if somebody else isn't going to play him, then I should. So let's play all the dogs, man. Yeah, no, they're not going to play it. They're not as smart as us. We figured this out. So I'm sorry that this wasn't the most eloquent of the videos. And, again, this is one of the ones that kind of trips me up. Yeah, everybody's going to be KC 4-stack. So, yeah, let's do something different. Who cares? Let's yellow it. And let's ship some of these tournaments, man. I'm excited now. I think we figured this out. Yeah, you just have to play the dogs. Absolutely. So, that's it. That's it for this episode of Esports with Emerick. As always, you can find this posted in two spots. The esportsdepartment.com. You can find it under the DFS analysis. The site is completely free. All of the DFS analysis, the projections, the betting articles, completely free. Please, definitely, if it helps you, you win some money, go ahead, donate to the cause. Join us over in the Discord. I know a couple people that have seen the video have popped over and joined us there, and that's fantastic. We love having new faces there. Don't be afraid to go ahead and talk. There's a lot of people. You just have to understand that have some shtick. Don't take it personally. But beyond that, have a good time, get to know some people, and get some good information. But also, you can find my other content, my DFS content for other sports, as well as esports, over at drroto.com. We have a lot of premium content, cheat sheets, and actually, I'll be doing a guest spot on Sirius Radio with Dr. Roto himself tomorrow around 8:15, channel 87 for Fantasy Sports Today. So check that out. Or if you're watching this video in the morning, maybe tune into the radio station and hear me talk about some do's and don'ts of DFS leading into the NFL season. And then, finally, if you're watching this video on YouTube, please drop a like. Go ahead, hit subscribe, and let's take down some tournaments. I will talk to you guys tomorrow as we go over a different group and kind of review this one. And hopefully our fate of KC works and pays dividends. Thanks, guys.